Who are you? What's your role? And where do you work?
Yeah, so my name is Katie. I am a staff product manager of platform and open source at Intuit.
What are 3 Kubernetes emerging tools that you are keeping an eye on?
Yeah, so as a product manager, specifically of Argo CD and Argo rollouts at Intuit, the number one emerging project that I'm keeping track of is our new Argo promotions project, which focuses on environment promotion in a declarative way. The second project that I'm keeping track of is KHGPT. One of the biggest problems that we have internally is summarizing, being able to summarize a lot of the outputs that we get from either our build logs, our deploy logs that occur in failures, and making sure that we can produce outputs in a GenAI way that is consumable from our developers. So the fact that KHGPT is functioning in that way for Kubernetes issues is really interesting to us. And the third one that I'm keeping track of is a new one that was just announced by Reddit a couple days ago called Achilles SDK, which is an easier way to write Kubernetes controllers.
Next questions are based on comments that have been given by our podcast guests. So, if we're talking about GitOps and platform engineering, one of our guests, Hans, argued that GitOps is an excellent building block for building platforms with great developer experience. He mentioned the ability to merge, review, and discuss code changes and pull requests, and the additional benefit of not granting permissions. Should all platforms use GitOps? What's your experience?
That's a great question. At Intuit, we do use a flavor of GitOps, and that's something that's worked out really successfully for us. But in terms of a general blanket statement of should every company use DevOps or GitOps, I think that it really depends on a current company situation. There are certain things that come out of the box with GitOps that every company is going to want to implement, like auditability, and being able to see a single source of truth for all of your resources that are going to be deployed into different environments. But that doesn't mean that GitOps is the only way to accomplish those things. And for other companies that want to accomplish it another way, you can accomplish it using other tools. It just involves you building those solutions from custom.
Speaking about availability and platform engineering, our guest Hans compared delivering software now to 20 years ago. He mentioned that while downtime was acceptable in the past, it isn't today. Hence, building platforms on top of Kubernetes requires more tooling than ever. Is it possible to keep tool sprawling at bay? What kind of tools are essential for building mission-critical platforms?
Yeah, I think as the Kubernetes landscape continues to evolve, there's going to be more and more tools that come alongside it. I will say in terms of availability, the number one thing that I've seen success with at Intuit is using progressive delivery. So an example of that we use is Argo rollouts. So a majority of our service workloads run on Argo rollouts today, and we use a canary stepwise deployment in order to improve availability in production. So that means when we make a change and we deploy out into production, we send 10% of our production traffic over to that new change. And if we sense that something is wrong right away using metrics, we're able to automatically roll back. Now, we've seen an improvement on our number of incidents. So the number of incidents that have occurred with adoption of progressive delivery versus non-adoption of progressive delivery, there is a 50% decrease of those incidents for those who have adopted progressive delivery. So that's huge. And as we continue to advance on our availability strategy, we are looking to utilize our new open source tool called NewApproach to generate an anomaly score that will make it even more sophisticated and more quicker to be able to roll back with that anomaly score versus just static metrics that we look at today.
Platform engineering and people. Our guest Ori shared that rushing into solutions without understanding the root cause can lead to fixing symptoms instead of the actual problem. He mentioned the case of network policies and how sometimes the root cause of a problem is a people problem, and the solution lies in addressing that. What is your experience with providing tooling and platforms on Kubernetes to other engineers? What are some of the soft challenges that you faced?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this actually relates directly to my talk that I had at ArgoCon yesterday. And we've noticed that, when using something like Argo CD UI, that as a platform engineer, we find it extremely intuitive, extremely easy to use. But unfortunately, when you put it in the hands of application developers that aren't as experienced with Kubernetes, it can be a little bit daunting and a little bit confusing. And unfortunately, people can step on their toes and cause outages. And so it's really important for us when we are producing, as a platform team, when we are producing this technology and these tools in order to enable developers to be more productive, that one, we wear their hat and essentially understand the lens that they are looking at things through. and two, make sure that we prevent them from stepping on their own toes. So fine-grained RBAC policies is one thing that we had to introduce most recently to make sure that we can have good coverage over that. The second thing that we need to look into, relating back to KHGPT that we have looked at internally, is using GenAI to summarize our issues that we encounter with our builds and with our deploy strategy within Argo CD. So today, we have thousands of lines of build logs that developers will unfortunately have to sift through if they experience a build failure. And so it was great for us to build a tool that took those logs, was able to generate a summary, and provide that feedback to our developers. So they had to ingest such a small and concise and straightforward knowledge base in order to solve those issues instead of having to sift through those thousands of lines of logs. And we accomplished that with the same with the Kubernetes logs within Argo CD as well.
Kubernetes turned 10 years old this year. What should we expect in the next 10 years to come?
Yeah, so 10 years of Kubernetes meant the landscape completely exploded. There is a ton of companies now that provide a ton of open source tooling that also provides configuration, security, controllers, operators. But as the landscape continues to grow, so does the complexity with the project. So in my opinion, over the next 10 years, we're going to see a strategy form that in order to keep Kubernetes usable, not only for platform engineers, but for application engineers, we need to be able to build layers on top of Kubernetes that abstract and simplify this as an orchestration tool so that it can continue to evolve with the times.
Katie, what's next for you?
So what's next for me is actually looking into that problem internally. So at Intuit, we are building an AI-powered runtime tool to abstract Kubernetes from our application developers so that they can focus on writing code themselves and not have to worry about the infrastructure that runs underneath. So this is a huge priority for Intuit, and I'm really excited to be an active part of it.
How can people get in touch with you?
I am on CNCF Slack. You can reach out to Katie Lamkin-Fulsher, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.